Baal is simply Satan's disguise. Because if you go with what the Jews said in Mark 3:21, Mark 3:22 to 30. If you go with the Jews, Baal-zebub, Lord of the Flies or Lord of the House, is the prince of demons. But the prince of demons would be Satan. So here, if the Jews are right, and Jesus didn't correct them, he didn't correct them saying, no, you're wrong, Beelzebub is not the prince of the demons, the ruler of demons. That means Beelzebub, Baal, is simply another name of Satan. Are you with me there? Simply another name of Satan. So if Beelzebub or Beelzebul is the ruler of demons, then that means that's another name for Satan, because Satan has various names. Satan, the devil, Belial, Beliar, right? He has various names, right? The serpent, the dragon, these are his names. So that means Baal is simply Satan in disguise in order to mislead people from worshiping the true God. You with me there? Now, if that's true, and the Bible indicates that's the case, Baal is simply Satan disguising himself as a god to lead people away from the worship of the true God. If that's true, then that means if I establish tonight by the sources, if I establish Allah is simply another form, another name for Baal, and Islam is simply another form of Baal worship, then that actually further confirms Islam is the religion of the devil. It's Satan's religion that Satan inspired through Muhammad to be the competitor against Judeo-Christianity. So it's like history repeating itself. As Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes, nothing new under the sun, the same lie, the same deceit, the same trickery being promoted throughout the ages, but under different disguises, repackaged. It's the same deceit, but repackaged, right? So here are the three facts I want to establish. Here are the three facts, and this is all in my articles. Fact number one, Hubal was the chief deity, the chief god of Mecca and of the shrine, the Kaaba. That's the first fact. Fact number two, Hubal was actually Baal. Hubal, and the Muslim sources will testify, was actually the Arabic name for Baal. Some people believe Hubal either comes from Hubal, he is Baal, two Arabic words, or it is an Arabicized corruption of the Hebrew words Ha-Baal, the Baal. Okay, let me spell it out. Some people will tell you that Hubal is either Arabic for who, he, Baal is Baal, or it's the Arabic corruption of Ha-Baal. The two Hebrew words Ha-Baal means the Baal. Okay, that's the second fact. The third fact, Hubal was Allah, Allah was Hubal. If you actually read, quote unquote, between the lines, you're going to see Hubal was Allah, Allah was Hubal. So are you now ready to dig in? I want to give you a little background on the pagan religion in Mecca. Mecca, Medina, that's Arabia. Mecca, according to the Muslim sources, is the place where Muhammad was born. He belonged to the Quraysh tribe, which was an Arab tribe that lived in Mecca. And according to the Muslim sources, the Meccans were into astral worship. Astral worship. Now explain what astral worship means. Like other ancient civilizations, they associated the planets and the sun and moon with their gods and goddesses. And that link I gave you, I'm quoting the late Abdullah Yusuf Ali in his translation of the Quran, which I quote. He admits that the Arabs before Muhammad and during the time Muhammad were into astral worship, where they worshiped the sun and moon and 5 planets because they thought there were only 5 planets. Now let's do the math. Sun, moon, 5 planets, that's 7, right? Follow with me, that's 7, right? Sun and moon and 5 planets, that's 7. Now, in many cultures, the sun was the male deity and the moon was the female deity. The sun was the male deity and the moon was the female consort, the female deity. Not in Arabia. In Arabia, the moon was the male deity and the sun was the female deity. And the sun was the consort, the wife of the moon. Let me just read what Abdullah Yusuf Ali says. I mean, what he says. This is a Muslim. Now, he's passed away, but he admits this. To revert to the worship of the heavenly bodies, okay? A few individual stars did attract the worshippers' attention, e.g., Sirius, first and last, and Protestant. So the Arabs worship Sirius, the dog star, the brightest fixed star in the heavens with a blush tinge in its light. It is probably Sirius that is referred to as the fixed star in the parable of Abraham. With regard to the fixed stars and their myriads, the astronomers turned their fancy to devising groups or constellations. Now, here's where it's going to get relevant, okay? But the moving stars are planets, each with a motion and therefore will or influence of its own, right? As they knew and understood them, they were 7 in number. That's what they thought, 7. And now he tells you what the 7 are. Viz, 1 and 2, the moon and the sun. So count. The 2 objects which most closely and indubitably influence the tides, the temperatures, and the life in our planet. 3 and 4, the 2 inner planets, Mercury and Venus. So that's 4 so far, Mercury and Venus, which are morning and evening stars and never travel far from the sun. 5, 6, and 7, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. This is a Muslim whose Quran translation was widely circulated and distributed in the 20th century. Okay, did you see what he just said? The Arabs in Mecca, in Arabia, but in Mecca, worship the sun and moon and 5 planets as 7 gods and goddesses. 7, right? You're going to see the relevance in a minute. You're going to see the relevance in a minute. And I hope I don't put you to sleep here. Okay, I want you to listen. He goes, and the Arabic word for the moon, qamar, the Arabic word for the moon, qamar, is of the masculine gender. And on the other hand, the Arabic word for the sun, shams, is of the feminine gender. The pagan Arabs evidently looked upon the sun as a goddess and the moon as a god. So the Arabs in Mecca, Arabia in general, but Mecca specific because that's where Muhammad was born. They viewed the moon as the male god and the sun as the female god, or the goddess. That's going to be important. Let me bring out the implication. The sources teach that the Kaaba in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, was a shrine that housed 360 idols. This is in the Muslim sources. It's not non-Muslim sources. 360 idols, okay, which Muhammad eventually destroyed. Okay. The Muslim sources also admit the pagans before Muhammad would perform what they call the rites of pilgrimage, right? Hajj and Umrah, meaning they would come to the Kaaba, and those who lived there didn't need to travel. The Kaaba, that cube building that's been rebuilt on more than one occasion in Mecca, and the pagans would run around it 7 times. 7 times. Something Muslims do to this day. Muslims adopted these practices from the pagans. Muslims, like the pagans before them, right, would run 7 times. Okay? Folks, you don't understand what this is going to do to Islam. The Kaaba, which may have initially been a shrine of Hubal alone, housed several idols, meaning when it was built, the shrine was built, there was only Hubal. Later on, they started adding idols. But initially, when it was built, there was only the god Hubal, his idol there. Later on, they started adding idols. Okay? Again, Malis Ruthven, Islam in the World, page 15. The presiding deity was Hubal. Okay? The presiding deity was Hubal. Now, page 17. Although originally under the aegis of the pagan god Hubal, the Meccan Haram, which centered around the well of Zamzam. Notice, Mecca, the city, the shrine, all swore to Hubal as the god of Mecca and the shrine. Hubal was the god of Mecca and the shrine. He was the god that was worshipped there. Now here, a leading Islamic scholar, Islamicist, he's not Muslim, but he's a leading authority on Islam, Fred McGraw-Donner, in his book, Muhammad and the Believers at the Origins of Islam. Notice what he says. At the center of the town was the shrine called the Kaaba, a large cubical building with a sacred black stone affixed in one corner. That was the sanctuary to the pagan god Hubal. Now let me go back and reread or read another citation from Malis Ruthven, page 28. The god of Mecca, Hubal. The god of Mecca, Hubal, page 28 from Malis Ruthven, Islam in the World. Now here's another one. A.J. Brill's First Encyclopedia of Islam, volume 4, page 591. In the Kaaba was the statue of the god Hubal, who might be called the god of Mecca and of the Kaaba. Kaitani gives great prominence to the connection between the Kaaba and Hubal. Beside him, however, Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were worshipped and are mentioned in the Quran. Hubal is never mentioned there. Isn't that ironic? Hubal is never mentioned in the Quran, but Allat, Al-Uzza, Manat is mentioned. Okay. What position Allah held beside these is not exactly known. You see the confusion? We know Hubal is the chief god. He's the god of the Kaaba, the god of Mecca, the god that the pagans there swore to. And yet Hubal is not mentioned in the Quran, and we're not so certain what role Allah played there. You know why they're not certain? Can I explain to you why he's saying we're not really certain? Karen Armstrong, Muhammad, a biography of the Prophet, pages 61 to 62. Okay. At the time of Muhammad, the Kaaba was officially dedicated to the god Hubal. And notice what she says where he came from. At the time of Muhammad, the Kaaba was officially dedicated to the god Hubal, a deity who had been imported into Arabia from the Nabateans in what is now Jordan. Another concession that this idol comes from Jordan and Syria, where you had the Moabites and the Ammonites. Interesting. Interesting. Right? Admits in another source, Islam, a Short History, pages 10 to 12, she says that the pagans before Muhammad would do the following. The pagans before Muhammad, and Muhammad adopted it. She admits these are pagan practices done before Muhammad that he adopted. What are some of the pagan practices that Muhammad adopted? This is Karen Armstrong. They would kiss the black stone embedded in the wall of the Kaaba, which was probably a meteorite that had once hurled to the ground. Oh, so wait. The pagans before Muhammad used to kiss the black stone and Muhammad adopted it? Now we know why the pagans did it. Why is Muhammad doing it? Then she says in that same source, officially, the shrine was dedicated to Hubal, an Nabatean deity, and there was 360 idols arranged around the Kaaba, probably representing the days of the year. Okay, Karen Armstrong, you are not hostile to Islam. You're very friendly to Islam, and you bend over backwards to appease Muslims. And Muslims even invite you to lecture in their meetings, and they praise your books, your biography on Muhammad and your introduction to Islam. And you admit that the shrine was officially dedicated to Hubal? Okay, now let me tell you the problem with this. Let me tell you the problem with this. This is not my opinion. Read any book on paganism in the ancient world. Guys, this is where I need you to listen. Read any book that outlines pagan beliefs and practices in the ancient world. This is a fact. Among the pagans, a shrine would be erected for one particular deity, not two. That doesn't mean they didn't acknowledge the existence of other gods and goddesses. It simply means that they would erect a shrine for one particular deity, and that shrine belonged to him and not to someone else. It belonged to him, not to another. Now, you could honor other gods and goddesses in that shrine, but you couldn't say the shrine belonged to them because it belonged to this one, right? Okay. Folks, did you hear all these sources, Muslims and non-Muslims? Non-Muslims friendly to Islam. Did you hear when I read, they all admit the shrine, the Kaaba, was built for Hubal. Since pagans did not erect a shrine for more than one god, if they're admitting that Hubal is the god of the Kaaba, where does Allah fit in? Because Muslims are telling us the Kaaba was built for Allah. How does Allah fit in this scheme? If Hubal was the god of the Kaaba was built for him. Then who is Allah? If the Kaaba is the shrine of Allah, but it's the shrine of Hubal, and you can't have a shrine for more than one god. Here, Connect the dots. The necessary logical inference and conclusion: Allah was the name of Hubal. Hubal was the name of Allah. How do you get around it? No, it wasn't that he's renamed Tippy Bear. He's not. Do you remember earlier, Tippy Bear, what I said? I don't know if you're getting this, sister. Follow with me, please. Did the Jews rename Elohim Yahweh, Jehovah? Did they rename him Jehovah and stop calling him Elohim? Okay, so why would you say Hubal was renamed? No. The pagans would have called Hubal Allah because Allah would have been used by them to refer to the chief God. If you're the chief God, you're Allah. Now, if you mean that in Islam, the name Hubal was dropped and they focused just on Allah and then they disconnected Allah from Hubal, that's exactly what Satan did through Muhammad. Let me repeat that again. Here is Satan's mastermind. He disassociated Allah from Hubal through Muhammad, and the connection with Hubal was lost in order to deceive people into thinking Allah is the God of Abraham and not simply the name of Baal, because Satan worked through Muhammad as his prophet to dissociate Hubal from Allah, making it seem they're not the same in order to deceive 1.7 billion people from not realizing they're worshiping Baal under the guise of Islam. That's the satanic mastermind. That's why I said Islam is the religion of Baal. That's the mastermind of Satan. Allah was the name for Hubal. Hubal is Baal. But in order to mislead and deceive people from realizing that they're worshiping the god Baal, he raised up Muhammad, the son of Satan, this Antichrist, and got Muhammad to disassociate Allah from Hubal, so that the connection between Hubal and Allah was lost, so that you wouldn't see that Allah was simply Baal, in order to then deceive people into Baal worship, but disguising it as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.